Living in the UK as an American, I've noticed that there are so many everyday things here that you'd never find in the US. Some of them are charming, some of them are a little bit strange, and some of them just stop and make you feel super confused as an American. So today I'm sharing 10 things that you'd see in the UK that you'd never see in the US. Let's get into it. One of the first things that caught me off guard in British parks was seeing these long rectangular strips of artificial grass just kind of right in the middle of otherwise normal looking fields of, regular grass. And it took me a while to find out what it was really for because I didn't really get it at first. They're not random patches for decoration. They're specifically for cricket. The artificial wicket means people can play without the pitch getting destroyed by the unpredictable UK weather. In the US, baseball fields, basketball courts, and even soccer goals are pretty much common in every single park that you go to, but we don't have anything like this, of course. Since nobody really plays cricket in the States, it's such a subtle thing, but the first time I saw it, I was just super confused why there's just one patch of grass that always looks perfect in the middle of a park. And then one day I saw a group of high schoolers playing cricket and I thought, that makes sense now. Next we have double-decker buses, which might be the most iconic British thing on the list. Of course, London's bright red double-decker buses are world famous, but what surprised me is that they're not just in London. You can see double-decker buses all over the country, even in smaller towns. In the US, buses are almost always the standard single level, and public transport outside of big cities like New York or Chicago isn't really used that much, especially when you compare it to the UK or honestly anywhere in Europe. Even after 2 years of living in the UK, I still love riding on the top deck of the bus because it's just such a unique perspective. You're up high, you're looking down over the cars, seeing the city from a different angle, and honestly, I don't think Americans would complain if we had these, but in the States, people don't even use single-story buses that much, so there's not really a need to make them double-decker buses to fit even more people. Now, here's what I wish the US would adopt: the supermarket meal deal. In the UK, you can walk into Tesco, Sainsbury's, or literally any grocery store, corner shop, and grab a main, snack, and a drink, and they're all usually from 3 to 5 pounds depending on the shop. And we're not talking about, sad convenience store food. These meal deals can include wraps, sushis, fancy chips, smoothies, protein shakes, iced coffees, you name it. In the US, if you try to buy lunch at a grocery store, you're just buying the food for whatever it costs. No deals where you can just grab 3 things you want and make it cheaper to make it a meal deal, as far as I know. Meal deals are the unspoken cultural hack in the UK. Pretty much everybody knows about them, and they're so normalized that they're advertised right at the entrance of all the supermarkets. Next, we have street names painted on walls. In the US, street signs are almost always on a pole posted at the intersections. A lot of times, at least where I'm from in LA, they're green signs with clear, white, modern lettering, so it makes it super easy to read and you always know where to look for them. But in the UK, a lot of street names are literally painted on the side of buildings. Sometimes it's a carved plaque, sometimes it's painted directly on the brick wall. It kind of just gives neighborhoods such a distinct look, especially older parts of the city, and it can be a little bit confusing for Americans at first because when you're driving or walking, you're just kind of used to looking up and seeing a signpost and not just kind of scanning random sides of buildings to look for the street name. It does feel old-fashioned, but also kind of charming because most of the time they're not uniform, they're all unique. Even though you're in London, you might see like 20 different types of styles for street name signs. You can tell this system was designed in the days before cars were invented, when people were just kind of walking or riding horses around. It's one of those fun little quirks that instantly tells you, yep, you're definitely not in the States. Next, we have castles and ruins just casually in town centers. This one still blows my mind. You'll be walking through a totally normal British town, walking past modern shops like Starbucks, Greggs, Primark, and then suddenly, boom, right there, a medieval castle in the middle of it all. In the US, our oldest buildings are maybe from the 1700s, and we kind of treat them like museums, but in the UK, castles from the 11th or 12th century are just part of the everyday landscape. People have picnics next to them, kids play football nearby, and sometimes they're even integrated into the parks or shopping districts. The casualness of it is what's shocking, because in the States, something like that would be completely fenced off with tickets, gift shops, guided tours, but here it's just kind of part of the scenery, and it makes daily life feel like you're walking through history even when you're just running errands. Next, we have electric wires for the whole street centralized on one pole. In the US, electricity poles are everywhere, but they're usually spread out evenly along the street with multiple holes holding up sections of cable. In the UK, especially in smaller towns and villages, you'll sometimes see one massive pole carrying all the wires for the street. Dozens and dozens of thick black cables radiating out like a spider web. The first time I kind of thought it was like some sort of sci-fi experiment or maybe like a cell tower or something, but this is just how the electric grid is managed here. It looks super messy and honestly a little dangerous compared to the neat grid layouts in American suburbs, but it's a very British solution. Compact, efficient, and making use of one central point instead of spreading everything out. Next we have red post boxes. This is an absolute British classic. The bright red Royal Mail post boxes in the US, USPS or the United States Postal Service boxes are usually blue arched bins, but honestly most people just use the small slots at the end of their driveway. In the UK though, you can see these tall cylinder style red post boxes on street corners everywhere. Some are even from the Victorian era with the royal insignia on them. Posting a letter in one of these feels like you're stepping back in time, but it's just super normal here. It's one of those symbols of British identity that you don't even really think about until you realize, oh yeah, we don't really have anything like this in the States. They stand out so much too. You could be on the busiest city street or even the tiniest rural village, and then that red post box is a little slice of tradition you see in the distance. Speaking of red icons, the red telephone booth is another sign that screams UK. Of course, hardly anyone uses them to actually make calls anymore, but they've been repurposed in the most British ways possible. Mini libraries, mini art exhibits, or even to store defibrillators. I've also seen a few as Wi-Fi hotspots as well. In the US, phone booths are almost extinct, and when they do exist, they're just kind of bland glass boxes, but in the UK, the red booth has become a cultural symbol, so much so that they've been preserved even after cell phones have pretty much made them obsolete, because tourists still flock to them for photos, like the famous ones along Great George Street in London with Big Ben behind you, but locals kind of just treat them as a normal part of the town. Next, we have pubs amongst houses in neighborhoods. In the US, bars are usually found downtown, in entertainment districts, or near college campuses. But in the UK, pubs are literally woven into the fabric of neighborhoods. You can be walking through a row of houses and suddenly there's a pub right in the middle of it. It's not a separate nightlife zone, it's part of the community itself. That's because pubs historically weren't just all about drinking, they were about gathering. Families would go, neighbors would meet up there, and it just kind of became a cornerstone of British social life. Like even in modern day, you'll see tons of families, even with babies or small kids, just kind of hanging out at pubs because it's not all about the drinking. As an American, it does feel really unusual at first because our equivalent neighborhood bar doesn't have that same kind of cozy, family-friendly vibe. I mean, anyone who's under 21 wouldn't even be allowed to go in, so you wouldn't be able to bring your whole family. And on top of that, it's rarely inside of a residential area, whereas here you could literally walk out of your house, turn the corner, and there's your local pub waiting. And finally, we have terraced houses. In the US, we're used to suburban neighborhoods with detached houses, front yards, and plenty of space in between neighbors, but in the UK, terraced housing, long rows of identical brick houses all attached, is the norm in many towns and cities. It's such a different look, and it kind of creates this uniform, compact feel that's very distinctively British. To give you a stat, around 27% of UK housing is terraced compared to less than 6% in the US, so that's a huge difference. At first, it does feel a little bit claustrophobic as an American coming to the UK, but you quickly realize it's just how communities are built here. The upside is that everything feels closer, cozier, and more walkable, but it's definitely one of those things that you'd never confuse with an American neighborhood because we prefer to have our space and have things a little bit more spread out. So those are 10 things that you'll see in the UK that you'd never see in the US, from pubs tucked into neighborhoods to castles next to shopping malls. These little details are what make living here so fascinating as an American. Which of these surprise you the most? And for my UK viewers, what's something you notice in America that we'd never see here in the UK? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your experiences. Now let's take a look at why I moved here in the first place.